It's Thursday, that means it's Legacy Review Day. Let's take a look at some legacy charts for BNC, which are important because the bigger crypto gets, the more tied crypto becomes to the legacy world. We saw ties to legacy as early as 2013 with USDCNY shenanigans. Definitely saw it in 2015, definitely saw it in 2017. The DXY is incredibly important to crypto movements. Understanding if we're risk on or risk off is incredibly important to understanding crypto movements. We like to think crypto, specifically BTC, is a hedge against inflation, is a hedge against chaos, but for the most part, it's acted as a risk on play. So if the VIX is rising, the fear index, then we are more risk off than risk on. So if you're bullish, you want to see VIX continue to decline. If you're bearish, you're expecting a big spike in the VIX. Some correlations down here. We're still holding a strong negative correlation with gold. There's your risk on, risk off interpretation right there. Gold is historically risk off strongly, so we should be correlated with gold. If we are also risk off, but historically we haven't had a correlation with gold. Historically, the DXY correlations have been mainly negative. This is 30-week rolling correlations, by the way. And correlations with SPX, NDX have mainly been positive, extremely positive, even though currently we're basically zero on those correlations. So SPX and NDX are lifting off without us in the crypto world as we're going in the opposite direction. DXY, I just can't stop looking at this chart. I wake up, I look at this every day, and I say, this is going to 96. If this goes to 96, crypto's in a lot of trouble because historically, again, we are more bullish crypto when DXY is falling. If DXY has a bullish burst through the cloud, then we're going to have some issues holding any bullishness on crypto because this would represent risk off or flight to cash, that sort of thing. I think stocks are going to have an issue with this as well. If tapering begins sooner rather than later because of inflation, stocks are going to absolutely melt, right? And all that's going to definitely impact crypto. So keep a close eye on this. If you're bullish, you do not want this to break up, even though in a vacuum, that breaks up 10 times out of 10. XAU, I think, is generally just untradeable here on the weekly, on the daily. It's all just noise, chop, mess. I don't really see anything specific. It's just in the cloud with a bearish TK cross, just trendless, very similar to what it did previously at this level. In and out of the cloud, up and down, bunch of nothing. Silver, on the other hand, still looks okay to me for bullish continuation. We're making a series of higher lows. Definitely needs to hold this low. It needs to hold the 200-day moving average in order for this to actually play out. But this could take months to actually move. It's legacy. This stuff doesn't happen quickly. Looking at SPX, I don't know why people are excited to buy here. I don't know who's excited to buy up here. It just doesn't look like it has strength for a decent risk reward opportunity to go higher. This thing is just squeezing higher and higher and higher for years and years and years. In this case, it's just months, but since the Corona low, there really hasn't been any significant corrections. I guess you could say September, but in a vacuum, that's not something I want to jump into. Even though I like buying strength over weakness, this just looks overbought to me. NDX equally similar on the weekly. The weekly 200 is really where I'd want to be if I was a buyer, more so than where we are now, right? Like this is all-time highs with bearish divergence. The funny thing about bears in a bull market is they say the sky is falling every time we keep going up, and eventually they're right, but they're wrong, right? For 5 years or whatever, right? They're wrong, and then Corona hits, and they're like, oh yes, I was right this whole time, right? So they're not exactly holding a good hit rate on being bearish. But this just doesn't look exciting to me as something I'd want to jump into in a vacuum. GME looks done to me, which is problematic for crypto as well. GME had a chance for bullish continuation, and it just is drooping. It looks like the Doge chart, very similar. Just going to droop down lower and lower and lower. AMC, I talked about this a couple weeks now. M double top, they're selling shares, right? There's no reason that this thing should continue higher. People are going back to work. People don't have stimulus money. There's 10,000 reasons why. The meme stonks. including Doge, are just done. Coin also has this M double top and just got absolutely slaughtered. All-time low in RSI on the hourly, below any volume supports. Right, this just looks like insider selling to me. It didn't hold any levels it should have held. This is either insider selling or just extremely bearish sentiment on anything crypto related. MSTR, very similar. M double top, very quick and swift downside over the past few days. And this potentially was what ETH could have looked like, right? ETH had this Adam and Eve that didn't break up. This is basically 3K for ETH is 800 for MSTR. Had this parabolic downside, ascending triangle, fake out thing, whatever, and then eventually did break up. Whereas ETH kind of stalled at MSTR's 500 equivalent. So this looks weak to me. Again, sentiment is not bullish. Anything crypto. Tesla, which holds a crap ton of BTC, also to me does not look like this is going to hold. This looks like more of a descending triangle than anything. Another mini M double top here. And I expect eventually 250 to 350. May take a year to get there, but that looks like where that's headed. Square actually looks decently okay. They also hold a lot of crypto. They enable crypto. They have a crypto wallet coming, a BTC specifically wallet coming. And they will probably reveal in their quarterly reports that they sold a bunch of sold a bunch of BTC through Square again, which is always just good news that we have onboarding mechanisms other than Coinbase for retail. Something else to watch for is whether or not Tesla sold any BTC. Elon has denied that thus far on Twitter, but we'll know what they say when they actually reveal what they did in their quarterly report. GBTC looks like it's ready for free fall. It looks different than the BTC USD chart in a few different ways. Definitely at the top. This is less of a head and shoulders situation outright compared to BTC USD. And this is definitely in more of a free fall compared to BTC USD. It's getting its death cross just now, but this looks like it's headed to 16 from 25. This does not look good. Looks incredibly bearish. You could maybe argue a bull div here, but it's to the point where they may have to step in and announce some buybacks or something if the premium to discount or whatever gets too negative. Here's ETH. ETH looks fine relative to BTC. This is still ranging. It's got a bunch of volume support here. It's probably going back to its January open, whereas this looks horrible. This looks absolutely horrible. If we look at the discounts on BTC and ETH, they're still negative, right? And any unlocks here, do you feel compelled to sell at a negative 12% discount? Probably not, unless you're certain that this is going lower. So it's kind of a musical chairs thing. What are the other unlocks doing? Are they selling as well? Any whale involvement in anything ever in the history of anything is never good, including GBTC, right? It feels great on the way up. It's like a drug, right? It's the best thing ever, right? We get all these people getting in this arb trade through BlockFi or through wherever. All of a sudden the music stops and it's like, oh, we're at a discount now. There's all these unlocks coming. Grayscale isn't buying anymore. They're slowly selling to cover fees and whatever else, right? Will this thing become an ETF? There's all these questions and uncertainty around it. But how this sits now just doesn't look bullish. ETC looks even worse, right? They're probably going to have to step in again and keep buying this. And then the LTC premium is comical, as is the BACH premium. Those are vesting period, locked period related. Definitely not people super bullish on LTC relative to spot. CME ETH chart, which I haven't looked at in a while, looks similar to the spot chart. There's no real things to comment on here. There's not a lot of chart history. It's within the range, certainly, and kind of closing in on its historic open. And the CME BTC chart still hasn't death crossed, and look at this volume gap to 13. Most of the volume historically has been here, obviously, on CME, with very little volume on the way up. Maybe you could argue some at 19, and this thing hasn't even death crossed yet. You probably could argue a bull div here. It's always interesting to look at this versus spot, because the legacy people may be paying attention more to this than spot. I don't know. You can look at premiums on this as well. 31.2, it's in slight backwardation relative to spot right now. And then the CME futures expiry chart just tells me historically these biannual contracts have been up or down, and we are definitely in the middle of a massive, very likely down contract. Historically, these do not switch directions once the direction is defined. So that would be very likely to be bearish until end of September when that rollover happens. So not a lot of bullishness across the board. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETH-BTC fund and DeFi portfolio. I trade for Techemy Capital on Enzyme.finance, where you can send ETH-USDC, ETH or USDC into the smart contract, allowing me to effectively copy trade those funds. You can see everything transparently for the fund in the portfolio, AUM, allocations, performance, all the trades I'm making for when, for where, in and out of Yearn, in and out of Aave, Compound, Paraswap, Kyber, ZRX. I can trade through all that stuff. I just use whichever gives me the best price for the lowest fees, which is almost usually Paraswap. You can see the DeFi portfolio is holding a bunch of stuff, earning a bunch of yield, and thus far we have been unable to kind of catch a break since we started this thing. It started in April, basically near the top, and then everything is just continuing to just melt slowly. But just like the ETH-BTC fund, you can see all of the yield plays that I'm involved with here and when I get in and out of those things. So that's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.